David Durfee, Shaftesbury, Bennington County. Yeah.
John O'Brien, I represent Roslyn and Tunbridge, sheep farmer.
Had some sheep experience. I did know that.
Same bunch of Romneys since 1960 or so.
I'm Michelle Blaslin. I represent Northern Wyndham County, Wyndham 3, which is Brookline, Westminster, and Rockingham.
I guess
And
sheep
I
in your
once
district.
owned the goat.
Yeah, but you're close to the best sheep cheese in the country, so that counts for.
Those are my constituents.
I know that. Yeah. Okay.
Vermont Shepherd Farm.
David Major.
We're a small committee and we have, we're missing several members. So this is it. I think somebody may pop in, but.
Okay, well, wonderful. I appreciate the opportunity to get to speak with you today. I probably first testified in front of this committee when Ruth Town was sitting up at that end of the table. So Art Minute and I used to spend a lot of time with Vermont Farm Bureau and so I've done a little of this. And in case anybody's curious, my brother's got the office downstairs.
Okay.
You sound like him and you look a lot like him. So.
And so I will correct you that I am the older brother and he looks like me.
Oh, okay.
We can look similar, but he looks like me because I look like this first.
Have a similar expression.
So, yeah, it's in a little bit of my history. So I grew up on a Jersey dairy in Glover, as you're, aware of what my brother said, went to UVM, got a degree in dairy food technology. Several of my professors are now in the UVM, not UVM, the Vermont Ag Hall of Fame, which is they were all well respected with that honor. I was on the dairy cattle judging team. We made a fly-in trip to Wisconsin and back in Richard's Blazer. Faster back. And then when I graduated from UVM, I went to work for the American Jersey Cattle Club in Ohio, and then worked in California, worked in Texas. When I was in California, I was an area representative, and my area was California, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, and Texas. So for a Vermont boy, I had a pretty big area, but it gave me a nice opportunity to see how some of the rest of the world views agriculture. Came back to Vermont, went to work for the Organic Cow, made the first organic cheese in the state of Vermont with Peter Flint and Tunbridge, and stayed there for a little while. And then in 1993, I moved back to Glover, went to work with Ted Young at Andersonville Dairy. We were 1996 Vermont Dairy Farmers of the Year. And then in 1999, I was the outstanding young Holstein breeder in the country. So managed to do some innovative, creative things. And I was also the National Dairy Shrine Progressive Producer in 1999. I went to the former Soviet Union as an agricultural dairy advisor to help set up co-ops, which in that time, if you remember, the Soviet Union had just collapsed. And if you said cooperative, you had to really explain what you meant, because co-op and collective was very synonymous. But we actually helped set up milk receiving stations so that individual farmers could sell their milk. And then I went to Germany as an agricultural ambassador on a McCloy Fellowship. So it's given me, some background in international ag and stuff like that. And actually managed to be the UVM College of Agriculture and Life Science New Achiever. And then this last year was the 2024 Vermont Fantastic Farmer. And there'll be a video at some point if Sidonia wants to show it. Became very involved in Vermont agriculture, mostly dairy. I'm a retired dairy farmer, and I spent most of my life dairy farming. I was president of Vermont DHIA. We merged with Lancaster, Pennsylvania DHIA, became president of Lancaster DHIA, was on the national DHIA board. I chaired the Dairy Records Management Service in North Carolina for 5 years. Was on the Council of Dairy Cattle Breeders Board of Directors and Secretary, that's the largest repository of genomic cattle data information in the world, where all dairy genetic information is stored and calculated. So then I retired from dairy farming and I said, sheep would be fun. Well, So I saw a picture of Dutch spotted sheep. They're a breed that originated in the Netherlands, and they're black and white. I mean, and what makes black and white exciting, I don't know, except that I can sell a black and white sheep hide for $500 and I can only sell a white one for $200. So I said, well, I want some of those. Where can I get one? And the answer was, you can't. And I said, don't tell me you can't. Watch me. So the embryo business had been shut down in import from residual effects of mad cow disease. So we hadn't been able to import into the United States from the UK or Europe for a long time. Long story short, I did that and imported the very first Dutch spotted sheep into North America in 2023. The embryos were put in, and I had the very first Dutch spotted sheep born in North America in Glover in May of last year. And they became sensationalized. Anson's got a picture holding one of my spotties that made it to the cover of the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture monthly magazine or whatever. I mean, so it's been a lot of fun. So I got involved with the Vermont Sheep and Goat Association, and unfortunately, the origins of the VSGA are unknown. I mean, there've been sheep in Vermont for 200 and some years. The records have been lost, buried somewhere, and that's one of the troubles sometimes with the volunteer organization. They just didn't get passed to someone, or the box got lost. We have no idea where it started, who started it, how old it really is. We just say it's over 100 because we're pretty sure, one, nobody can argue with us because there's no proof, and two, got to be over 100 years old. Most of you probably have heard or familiar at some point about the growth of sheep industry in Vermont back in the early 1800s, when William Jarvis imported the very first merinos into the state in 1809, and then followed up with establishing his flock in Wethersfield, and then the Vermont sheep industry just exploded. Had 1.7 million sheep or nearly 1.7 million sheep in the country and in the state in 1840. But then by 1940, there's only 17,000 left. And that's been kind of the history of the sheep industry. It got really big and then nearly went away. And frankly, nobody knows how many sheep there are in the state today, but the estimate is approximately that same number, around 17,000. But we're trying to do some things, and I'll speak to goats in a minute, because it is the Vermont Sheep and Goat, and we were accused when I took over, and all due respect to Dave Martin, who was in here before and served as president of the VSGA for 8 years. He called me December or January, said, "Mark, I'm 78. I'm getting tired. I need to slow down. Will you step up and be president?" I mean, so I said yes, but there's a lot of things we'd like to do. And but the assumption was that the G and VSGA had been silent for a long time because there hadn't been any representation of the goat industry, which if you look at the two industries in the state, the goat industry, there are fewer of them, but most of them are sustainable as individual enterprises. Whereas David Major may have the only self-sustaining sheep operation in the entire state. There's 17,000 sheep, and we all need a separate job to help sustain our bad habit. So that the goats have become infinitely integral in the small ruminant sector in Vermont ag, which I think is something. We see the continued decline of the dairy cow business. I was in the dairy cow business. Not every family makes millions of dollars of investments to stay in the dairy business.
In investments.
But what we see, and if you look at some of the goat dairies, and I know you've met Brian Jones and Holly from Tots Crossing Farms, our successful goat farmers are retired, reformed, former dairy cow enthusiasts. And so that attention to detail and the knowledge that comes from that. And it also helps to backfill the land and the facilities that were former dairies, because nobody's ever going to do anything again with what used to be a 50 cow dairy. But you can maybe milk 200 goats there. And with, Vermont Creamery doing what they're doing and the wonderful products they're making. And incidentally, Alice Hooper was one of my professors in college. My involvement with the processing end of it goes back a long ways, and I'm very interested. I've spent time at David's. I bought sheep from David. Sheep and goats in Vermont have a special place and an important place, and I think we hope that it's a growing beneficial presence in Vermont and in the Northeast, because just like anything agricultural, we can do a lot more of it in Vermont than some of our neighbors in southern New England. So my wife and I have basically it's a farm to table business where we raise lamb, we raise pork, we raise chickens, we raise turkeys, we raise rabbits, and we sell beef that we contract somebody else to make. We've got customers all over New England, but some of my lamb customers are formerly from Australia, the UK, Serbia, Croatia, the country of Georgia, Lithuania, where lamb is a much bigger part of their diet. Average American consumes 1.3 pounds of lamb. But there's a big opportunity, and not just with the ethnic market that we see, from folks that have immigrated into the United States, but well-raised lamb. And frankly, I'll be honest, I never ate lamb of any kind until I raised it and said I probably ought to try some. But it's something that we need to get more people to try, to experience, to eat. And I know, this feeding Vermonters thing. I mean, not to diminish it by calling it a thing. Yes, and I heard you say that, and I was very happy to hear it. That's the type of thing that my wife and I have desired to do. I mean, we raise food. We started raising it for ourselves and for our family, and then it just grew. And we're raising 60 or 80 lambs a year and 20 pigs and hundreds of chickens and, several dozen turkeys. But the problem with the industry right now is now we can't find a place to have our lambs processed. Northeast Kingdom Processing told Dave, they didn't tell me because I quit having them processed, they're not going to process any lambs in October and November next year. Well, that's when, if you're a pasture-based operation, that's when you want to harvest your product. So without having some of the slaughterhouses available to, and some of them just flat out won't do a lamb because they say they can't push enough lambs through their facility to pay their help. So we need to make sure that we continue to have access to on-farm slaughter, custom processing, because without it, most small ruminant farmers couldn't survive. And frankly, it's for the best for the animal. We process an animal at home. We have a pen of them, put a halter on them, bring them outside the door. Mary Lake, who, bless her heart, hits them with the captive bolt. I'm holding them. They don't know that anything's different. So, we guarantee the animal an exceptionally good life and as short, unpleasant final moment as can possibly done.
Representative Nelson.
So you're able to do this on-farm slaughter and custom meat. A lot of your stuff's going custom, but you can't sell it in a store yet when
Right.
it's done that way.
Right.
Is Phil doing a lot of your processing?
Phil's meat, yes, he does all my pork, he does all my beef, but his meat cutter won't do lamb.
He won't do lamb.
And Phil is the one that told me that he can't push enough lambs through his facility to pay his help.
Have you contacted, we have a new processor in town. Ryan Champagne.
Yep,
Have
I know who
you,
it is.
have you reached out to him?
Not yet, because I haven't needed to. I've been able
You've
to,
been able, okay,
I've-
great.
but not everybody has.
Yeah, and not that I want you to take away my business, I want to do with him, because those slots are near and dear.
Yeah.
You know, we learned in this committee a while ago about Myers Produce. And if you ever get to the scale that you want to reach out and expand your market through licensed, they have the vehicle, I really believe, to help expand
Mhm.
Vermont agriculture into the southern New England market.
My wife would shoot me. I have promised her that we're cutting down. So we increase lambs, we increase pigs, we increase turkeys, but we're doing less broilers. So now I can tell her that yes, we're cutting back.
Are you doing laying hens?
No, well, she has a few, but not commercial. So our goal is to do better, and we like to maintain that personal contact with our customers. When our customers come to our house and pick up their meat, they know where it is. I mean, we offer, no one does it, but we say, if you want to come up and pick out and say, I want that lamb, we'll do that for you. But most people can't look dinner in the eye and eat it later. And that's perfectly fine. And because we tell people, that's okay, we'll do it for you. We guarantee the animal a phenomenal life. And we had a lot of people, I had 4 people in the barn yesterday patting lambs. We do that. We offer that opportunity because we want that connection with people. And so that's one of the things that the Vermont Sheep and Goat Association, encourages, is trying to get the public more in tune with what we're doing. We also do a lot of workshops to help new and young entrepreneurs get into the business in a more knowledgeable fashion. We'll have Dave runs a lambing clinic at Shelburne Farms in April, and it's booked. It's full. There's 20 slots. 20 slots are full. We've done wool classing. They did it wasn't us, but we were involved with the halal meat slaughtering last year, because there's a lot to do with proper processing of animals, right from the lambing. So I've sent Dave some, a lot of people will castrate a lamb with a rubber band. Well, you can buy a plain old castrator band for $0.05. For $2, you can buy one that's impregnated with lidocaine, which is an animal well-being. And they've done research on dairy calves where the calves on the control were 3 pounds smaller than the calves that were castrated with the lidocaine infused band, because it offers pain relief at a point in time where the animal needs it. So Dave has never used one. I have. And I've sent him the stuff, but that's what this year's lambing clinic is gonna encourage people to use a more humane method of castration. It's a fundamental management technique that is going to be used. And the more that we can do to, improve welfare, the better.
Get that information to me, please.
Yep. There's actually a link to a website, to an article that was just done but yeah. So, that's part of what we're trying to do. And the other part is trying to establish some value for wool. I mean, that's what made the sheep boom so big 200 years ago. But now we've got, I don't know how many different breeds of sheep, how many different crossbred types of sheep, and all sheep wool is different. And if you're a manufacturer or a spinner or a processor of any kind, it needs to be all the same. You can't make wine out of one type of grapes today, the next type tomorrow, and sell it all in the same bottle. And the same is true with wool. So we've had discussions with Aaron Desatel at Johnson Woolen Mill. They have to buy their wool in North Carolina. They'd love to buy Vermont wool. They have reached out to buy Vermont wool, and what our answer is? We don't know how to accumulate a volume and quality necessary to supply you. And as president of VSGA, I'm going to try to do a survey. We're going to try to begin to do some things. Part of it is management, part of it is breeding, part of it is genetics. But I don't know how to meet that need. And we need to. I mean, it's important because right now wool is considered a waste product in most sheep operations. Fortunately, there's a new process to make wool pellets that might add some value to substandard or poor quality, or even the belly wool. They say sometimes even the more manure that's in it, the better it makes a pellet. But there's some value there as a soil amendment. But the machine, you can buy a $30,000 or $40,000 pellet mill that'll last 3 years and be worn out. Pelletizing anything it's rough on equipment. But a good machine's $1 million. You know how many wool pellets you got to sell to recoup $1 million? I mean, so I don't know what the reality of having one of those in Vermont is, but we're trying. We've got a wonderful business in Manchester Center, Vermont Natural Tannery. They do the best job ever to tan a hide. And if you've ever seen a hide tan, you haven't seen one as good as they can do. But they only do 6 a day. They've got a backup of a year. That's not sustainable. I mean, we can't. Go ahead.
They have rules they have to follow, whereas in China, they can let it go down the Yangtze River. So that's probably.
Well, it's an entirely different process. So there's
Yeah.
chromium and heavy metals used. I mean, I can bring them to Quakertown, Pennsylvania, and have them done commercially with toxins and everything else, and they smell toxic when you get them back, open the bag. The ones from Vermont Natural Tannery, they smell like a clean sheep, which is a rare thing, but you can smell the lanolin, you can feel it. If you send a sheep in that's got some different colors to it, they'll come back in the hide, where if you send them to one of these chemically treated places, it's all bleached out.
Do you have a question? Representative?
I do.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to the wool pool? Because growing up, right?
Yep.
The wool we didn't sell, we could always take the wool pool. It wasn't a great price, but it was, I think it was all New England.
It was.
Went to Maine.
Yeah. There are no buyers.
Who funded it then? Was it a government thing?
It wasn't a government, but there were buyers that would commit to buying 100,000 pounds of wool at a time, which is what you needed to do. I actually tried to write a grant through Working Lands for the Vermont Sheep and Goat Association, and there was $10,000 in that to establish a wool pool. We didn't get the grant, but that is one of our functions, because we have to develop some value for wool, because almost all of the 17,000 sheep in there make 5 to 8 pounds of wool. But most of it is going into a compost pile right now, because you can't find somebody to spin it or do anything. And we've got some nice new Aurora Spinnery and Junction Fiber Mill and Green Mountain Spinnery and Kingdom Fiber Works. They're all doing all they can. I give all of my wool to individuals to see what they can do with it. I said, just experiment. Just let's see what we can make with it. Just trying. And my background is as a dairy farmer, so I've only got a few years of experience with sheep. I've got some common sense, and I know that things can be done even when you're told you can't. You can if you try hard enough and know the right places and the right strings to pull. And that's part of what I see my role as president of VSGA right now, is to try to strengthen the industry for both sheep and goat. For however long I do this, because it's important to me. Vermont agriculture is important to me. And like I said, I think we're going to see sheep and goats in places that we saw cows before, or where we haven't seen anything, because sheep graze, goats browse. I mean, they can take care of roadsides. And something that I found out when I went to Phoenix to the American Sheep Industry Association meeting, a lot of these solar farms they're putting in, there are some states that require ruminant vegetation removal. Petroleum-based vegetation removal is not allowed. So in places like Oklahoma, where they're building these huge things, they have to plan with animal welfare people these sites. They're drilling wells for water supply for these animals. And I think in Massachusetts, there's a regulation that a lot of the vegetation removal has to be done by ruminant, and it's sheep. You don't want a cow because they're going to wreck things and a goat's going to climb on top of it. So the only thing that your equipment is safe with is with sheep. So I think there's some potential there for sheep. So while we're trying to develop some extra value for the meat that we're already making and try to encourage more people to get into the milk and the cheese business and to try to create some value for the wool, from Muriel's of Vermont making $200 sweaters to selling bags of wool pellets. But there's so much that has to go on between where we are today and where we need to go. And frankly, I'm not asking for any solutions, and I'm sorry to be here offering so many problems as they might be perceived. They're challenges, they're issues. I wanted to, and I'd have been here earlier in the year. I'd intended to, and I told Dave, when I saw him at the thing up at the cafeteria, I wanted to make an appointment, come in, but I had a detached retina, and that set me back for 6 weeks. So I'm just getting to where I can operate.
Representative Nelson.
Yeah, the Vermont Vinters really like sheep
Yep.
and they're great.
So one of my other jobs, because I like jobs, is I do contract auditing for a nonprofit company called A Greener World. And they do certifications for animal welfare approved, certified non-GMO, certified grass-fed, and certified regenerative. And I've actually done some certifications for vineyards in California, where that's how they control the low vegetation on the vines, and they'll use a winter cover crop between the rows, and they'll have 15 or 1600 sheep come in, and they just graze it. I did the largest olive ranch in the United States, California Olive Ranch. You can see their stuff at Shaw's or anywhere. So the 4,600 acres of olives are all certified regenerative now. And that's how they manage all of their vegetation, is with sheep. So it's something that, as an industry, we've got something in sheep that, cattle don't have, goats don't have. And there's a lot of evidence to where, the rotational grazing of sheep improves the soil, it improves carbon sequestration. You can run sheep on lands that might be characterized as wetlands that you can't run a cow on. And so there's a lot of opportunity. So I am going to mention the word opportunity to go with the word challenges every once in a while. We know there is some good things that sheep are doing and can do.
Representative O'Brien.
Mark, why is David Major the only sheep dairy? I mean, it's just interesting how, there's so many similarities between, say, Vermont and parts of France or Belgium or Switzerland, where both goat and sheep dairies are successful. They make great cheeses. We make great cheeses, and yet we have one sheep dairy.
Yeah. So I have a lot of my sheep. Fact is, my entire sheep flock, not the spotties, but the rest of them that I was growing, the Texel-based ones, all came from a former sheep milk dairy in Craftsbury. Neil Urey. He milked 250 sheep, same as David, made as good a cheese as David. But he got started at a time where you could have a pretty haphazard cheese house. And he didn't want to make the investment when the new HACCP rules came about. And I think that's what forced everybody but David. At one time, there were 9 sheep milk dairies in the state. And I think it's a lot of work. And there was a lot of, I don't know if it wasn't enough support or encouragement, or, farmers get tired and don't want to make that leap. But I know for one, my neighbor, that is exactly why he didn't continue. He wasn't going to make the investment in a new cheese house. It was going to be $250,000.
No, probably breed too, and you can't just go out and buy 500 sheep period.
Same with the goats. They say their biggest impediment is genetics.
Yeah.
And with the goats and probably with the sheep, but this, what happened to Neil is the same thing that happened to our grandfather's friends when they required bulk tanks.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. But that's the way of the world. I mean, it's really, it was an improvement, I think. But you've got to roll with the times, with technology, and not everything is as welcome as the other, but we struggle to continue to make things better. And Anson Tebbets has been all over me. He's hoping that I can convince some of the Amish, because I've big Amish community up where we are. In fact, I had a couple Amish guys install some cabinets for my wife yesterday. But because all the Amish have sheep, nearly all the Amish have sheep, and he's hoping we can get one of them started with a sheep milk dairy. I'm hoping to get one that'll process sheep hides naturally. In fact, is all on the way to my house yesterday. These are cabinet makers, but I spent the whole trip trying to convince one of their community to start tanning hides naturally. And I sent them home with an article about it, but these are the things, I think, if we could have 3 more tanneries like Vermont Natural, I mean, the products that they put out, there's only one other tannery in the United States that does it, and they're in Wisconsin. But that's something that if somebody and it's all natural and it's working with the 3 guys at Vermont Natural are vegans. I mean, and so, that the process that they're employing to make these hides, and they feel connected with each one. I mean, it's just.
I don't know the business in Manchester, Vermont Natural, but are they, how does Act 250 affect an expansion, say, of a business like that?
They don't want to get bigger is their problem.
They did with
I don't know.
the agricultural definition of processing.
Yeah. So I asked him about, it's Derek Anderson. And so I asked Derek, I said, well, can you set up a satellite facility somewhere in the middle of the state or something? And his answer was, no, we're a boutique. So, I mean, so they are, and like I said, God bless them, they do a fabulous job, but they've got 900 hides in their attic and they're only turning out 6 a day. And they're not the solution for Vermont sheep producers that want that quality product. There's room for that. And I don't know how to encourage somebody to do it or instill, but I'm I'm telling everybody I can. There's got to be a place for it.
You mentioned that we don't know how many sheep, we don't know exactly how many sheep there are in the state. Do you, how many members you have who are raising sheep and goats?
Well, that's a funny question too, because you can be a member if you just like sheep, and we don't actually ask. So we have members that had sheep 20 years ago. It's not a requirement, and it's not a field of data that's in the membership application. So I can sit here and honestly tell you there's nobody in the state that has a clue, and Anson included, has a clue as to how many sheep there are in the state. So we've talked about it with the Agency of Agriculture, with the Vermont Sheep and Goat Association, and with UVM Extension to try to conduct a survey.
Sheep census.
Well, they used, when they had a poll tax, I mean, that's why there's such accurate numbers up to a certain point in time in our history, because they were all taxed by the head. But we don't know that anymore.
Same with goats.
We have a better idea on goats because the goats are dairy typically, and the dairies are all licensed. So we have a little better handle on the goats as a state, as a number in the industry.
What was the organization that for a while they would sort of co-op sheep carcasses and take them down to fancy restaurants in New York? I know it wasn't the association, but it was.
No, it wasn't.
There sheep growers or something like that, and then they used to get a pretty good price for it.
Yeah, and I don't, that predates me. I heard about it, but I don't know. And see, that's the other thing is with Vermont sheep producers, most of us, so I've got a big flock, I've got 100. Well, if you're going to supply a restaurant, they want 5 a week or 10 a week. I grow all my lambs to butcher in October. And so in order to supply a restaurant in Boston or New York City or someplace else, or a group of them, you've got to be killing 20 sheep a week. That's a lot of sheep. And then they've got to be uniform. You can't have, and that's one of the reasons I went with the Dutch spotted is because they grow really fast. My ram at 91 days old weighed 110 pounds. We weaned him at 91 days old and he weighed 110 pounds. They've got a big meat to bone ratio. But you got a lot of people that are raising Icelandics or Shetlands or something, at a year and a half, they've dressed 35 pounds. My guy dressed 55 pounds at 3 months old. And so uniformity, it gets back to the same thing I said about wool, management, breeds. I mean, we don't have uniformity in this industry to get where we need to go. And I'm not saying anybody's wrong. I'm not disparaging Icelandics or Shetlands or anything else, but we need some uniformity. The wool people need to go this way. The meat people need to go this way. We need to find some milk people to go this way and then do what comes naturally. So.
Are you able to grow your spotted herd? Or, I mean, you still doing the embryos so you can diversify your genetics a little bit?
Yeah, I have to. So I've got there's a herd, a flock in Kentucky that just implanted 19 embryos. I don't know how many they got. So I implanted 44 embryos in December. Unfortunately, this year I only got 20 pregnancies.
Oh, you did all right.
Well,
Yeah,
we looked for 60%.
I understand.
But I spent $55,000 implanting embryos. I've got 20 pregnancies. I have 20, simple math says I have $2,500 a head in these cute little spotted sheep. It's going to be pretty tough for me to convince if you had a flock of sheep and you wanted one of my rams well, that's why I pointed at it. All right, I need $5,000 for my ram because I really do. But, I need to be able to justify the cost benefit to you. If you can get an average increase in carcass weight at butcher of 6 pounds and you're marketing 100 head a year, that's 600 extra pounds of meat that should have a value of $6 a pound or something. And so we can begin to do that. But those of us that are jumping off the deep end to get those genetics here.
Thanks for catching all the arrows, Mark.
And, in fighting with regulations. So I had a shipment of 60 that was supposed to come from the UK. And it's a 6-month process with quarantine and health testing and everything else. The last test, one of the donors tested positive to Smallenberg and it canceled the shipment. So I had 61 embryos. So I'm keeping a whole flock of sheep open, all set up for embryos. And then the embryos didn't come. So I just ended up breeding them with my spotty ram. But that wasn't what I intended. It wasn't part of the program. And so with any farming program, you roll with it. And that's what I've done. But I'm doing this with the spotties to try to add some value and integrity to genetics in Vermont, because we can increase the gain and the carcass value of all sheep in the state with crossing some genetics.
You don't 2 times a year breed, you stick with a one time?
Because we want to be pasture based. We want to be utilizing what the environment is giving us in the most sustainable method practicable.
But you feed your sheep all winter long.
Hay, yep.
And hay grown on the farm.
Yep.
So you don't see value in getting another crop of lambs.
Told you my wife would shoot me.
But there is value.
There is value. And so,
But
so
process.
there's credibility to that thought, because if we're going to provide those restaurants with sheep all year round, we have to be lambing all year round. And there's certain breeds that will do that.
I want on your list. I want one to put in my freezer.
Okay,
I'm serious.
you can come pick it out.
Representative Morgan.
What kind of acreage do you need to do what you're doing?
So right now, we own 75 acres, but only 15 of it is open. I've got 15 acres across the road. So that is all rotational grazing. There's 2 acres for the pigs. There's about an acre for the chickens. And actually, we follow the chickens with the sheep because, chicken manure makes the grass grow really fast. And when you've got those movable chicken houses, the grass is so tall, you can't get it back on them unless we turn the sheep in. So we've got about 25 acres. I use the FAP program through the Agency of Ag. I get $30 an acre, for using the rotational grazing program. So for me right now, I can run 100 sheep on 25 acres. But my hay land is somewhere else.
So you can get 4 sheep per acre.
With
Grazing.
intensive grazing.
That's a great.
Yeah, I move my sheep every day.
Fred Murphy would be proud.
Yes, he would. I did learn a couple things in college.
We're about at time. So thank you for making the time this morning.
Yep.
And I think it was helpful just to get this high level intro, and at some point, if we need to get back into the discussion, we'll let you know.
Yep.
And some of the members too.
Yeah, and there's some other areas, like I said, with the work that I do with A Greener World. I'm actually I'm a poultry welfare officer. I took a class. So,
Chicken cow.
well, that for proper slaughter of an animal in the state of Vermont, they need to be stunned before they're exsanguinated. It's not true with poultry. You can just cut their head off. I actually own a chicken stun gun. Because in my poultry class, I found out that the average chicken has 17 seconds of brainwave activity after it's decapitated. So at some point, I'd like to come in and talk about things like that have totally nothing to do with sheep, but I do have interest in some other areas. So thank you so much for your time this morning. I really appreciate it. Good to see you, Rich. I'm going to see my brother. I made an appointment. Now, my brother's so friggin' important. I got to make an appointment to see him.
Maybe he'll buy you lunch.
All right.
Thank you very much.
And there are there are a couple of links on the web page that we didn't get a chance at, a couple of videos that you mentioned. So
Apparently my articles. You can look at them if you want.